I want more films to have intermissions. I finally got to see The Brutalist, and it was the first time I've ever seen a film in the cinema that had an intermission, and I loved it. For all the common reasons you might think, it makes sitting through a longer movie easier, you can chat about it in the wait, and then there's just the opportunity to go get a snack if you want. But after watching The Brutalist, there's 3 other big reasons I want more intermissions, and it's all to do with how they change the experience of watching the movie. First one is that it changes the film structurally. Most movies are designed to be watched in one complete sitting. They're a roughly 2-hour experience about a contained story, so you get everything right from the beginning all the way to the end. And that means every scene is designed to move everything forward and keep you on one continuous path. Now, one of the advantages of watching a movie at home is that you can pause it at any time and at any point, but the movies weren't designed to be watched that way. The hope is that you get a completely uninterrupted, continuous experience, especially now in the age of streaming and viewer retention graphs where they can see exactly where audiences have paused or stopped, and they're trying to make as much of an effort to make sure you do not do that, because they make their money by keeping you watching, and there's a concern that if you stop, you'll become more interested in something else and cancel your subscription. Their task is to grab you at the beginning and never let you go. And there's nothing wrong with that. I love movies that do that, but I also love how the intermission completely changes that. An intermission creates an entirely new structure, because instead of just building to one climax at the end, it's building to one right in the middle. And the feeling of that is very different because it's an ending, but it's not the ending. It allows for that feeling of there being a resolution. You know, even though you've gone on this journey and you know that it's unfinished, it still feels like a part of it is complete. And that feeling of resolution is really powerful. I think it's why you can watch 7 episodes of a TV show and keep going, but struggle with a 3-hour movie. Because typically movies hold that feeling of resolution all the way to the very end, where TV shows, they're constantly giving you that sense of narrative closure every episode. Again, it's a resolution without the story being totally resolved, and I think that's what keeps you motivated to keep watching episodes of a TV show. And I think the intermission had the same effect for me with the movie. You know, it's not just about giving you a break, although that is really appreciated, but I felt it gave me a sort of eagerness to know what was going to happen next. And I think knowing that ties in with the second benefit of intermissions, which is it changes the audience perception. And I think it changes it in a number of ways. I think it changes how you think about the movie going into it, and then how you think about it after you've come out of it. Because I know when I've gone into long movies like Oppenheimer or Killers of the Flower Moon, even though they've been made by great directors and they've got Oscar buzz, when you combine their runtime with the ads as well, that's a big commitment. And it's a riskier commitment as well, because if you don't like it, you're stuck there for a long time. Knowing there's a break makes it more palatable. So it's not even the fact that it's better while you're watching it. I think it makes it easier even when you're going in to watch it. But more importantly, I think it changes how you reflect on the movie. And I think it does that in 2 ways. The first is because the movie literally stops, it gives you time to think and reflect on what's happened so far. Because in a standard movie, the thing just keeps on rolling. There's no time to really digest what's just happened or really anticipate what's coming up. But it also changes how you think about the story because it literally divides it in 2. There's a clear before and after. And that's a really powerful tool for writers and directors because I think it allows them to subvert what's happened before or comment on what's happened in the first part. Again, in The Brutalist, the first part of the movie is sort of living the American dream. It's the journey from nothing to something. And the second part is sort of the inverse of that. It's sort of the darker reality of it when things start to go wrong. And you don't need an intermission to do a rise and fall story. There's plenty of movies that have done it fantastically without, but it has a very different effect because it freezes you after the intermission on that moment of hope. I've always been fascinated by the question, if you were to divide your life into before and after, what's the event that would be the border between the 2? And the intermission forces the writer and director to think about that for the story. You know, where is the point between before and after? And so now, because you're forced to compare the 2 because they are 2 parts, I think that changes how you experience and think about the story than if it had just been in one continuous film. And that was quite exciting to me, and it leads to the third reason why I loved and want more intermissions, and it's because I think it creates interesting opportunities. The most obvious one is cliffhangers, and intermission allows you to leave the audience hanging on a certain point and build anticipation for the next thing. They can be used to leave an audience shocked and keep them wanting more. There's a power in that that's been underutilized, but I wonder if there's other things an intermission could do to change your experience as well. I wonder if an intermission would make it easier to accept a POV switch of character in a film, or completely changing the look and tone and style. Again, The Brutalist is the first film I've ever seen in the cinema that has an intermission. They're not common. But if they were more common, I wonder if we'd see filmmakers and writers playing with them more, experimenting, doing stuff with it that we'd never thought or considered. Because that intermission already gives you a feeling of resolution and satisfaction, I think you're more willing to accept the story going in a new direction because it has a new beginning almost. Now, it's important to note that what's interesting to me about it is the fact that a writer and a director have decided to put an intermission in a specific place. Because a film that's been conceived with an intermission in mind is going to feel very different to one that's just been haphazardly thrown onto the film after the fact. I know some theaters got into a little bit of controversy whenever they inserted their own intermission into Killers of the Flower Moon because the movie was so long. And again, you can create your own intermission at home just by hitting pause, and that's fine, we've all done it for one reason or another. But the fact that a writer and director have decided that that wait, that gap in between is part of the experience, that's interesting. But what do you think? Do you like the idea of more movies having intermissions? Would you rather they just made shorter films? Let me know what you thought in the comments, and if you want to keep up with everything coming up on the channel, make sure to subscribe.